So I'd like to welcome all of you again into our webinar, our collegiate and alumni members. I'd also like to welcome any alumni, volunteers, and alumni or volunteers from Hobie, our philanthropic partner. We appreciate all of you attending this webinar and watching the recording afterwards. So for some logistics for today, if you have any questions during the webinar, you can ask them in the Zoom chat box that is on your screen. For those of you who have already been chatting, you know where that is located. And again, just one more reminder to change the settings for your chat box to be set to sent to all panel and attendees so everyone can see your questions and your responses. Taylor and Mike today are going to be asking you some questions during the webinar, so please feel free to use that chat box at that time as well to answer their questions or ask them follow-up questions. There will also be some polls during today's webinar, so that will pop up onto your screen at that point, and you can click on the poll response. If the poll does not pop up on your screen, please use the chat box to answer the question. And now I would like to introduce our alumni member panelists for today. First, we have Taylor Brock, an Alpha Xi chapter alumni, and Mike Knoll, an Alpha Lambda chapter alumni. So Taylor, start with you. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thanks, Casey. Hi, my name is Taylor Brock. I am a current career advising fellow at Elon University.
And Mike, you want to introduce a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Mike Knoll. I became a brother in Phi Sigma Pi back in April 1995. Currently, I am a senior consultant of organization and employee development in human resources at University of Maryland, Baltimore.
Great. Well, thank you so much again to Taylor and Mike for being here today and to being our panelists. I am going to turn off our videos now so we can get started with our webinar. And I'm going to start off our webinar with a poll question. And the first one is easy, just to get us warmed up. I just want to know who's here with us today. You can take some time to answer the poll on your screen. Give everyone a few more seconds to answer that. Okay, great. So I'll share our results just so you can see how our polling will be going for today. So it looks like we're about even. We have about half collegiate members, half alumni members, an honorary member, and some national staff. So welcome to everyone. Thank you again for attending. Now I have another poll question for you. Do you know what professional communication is? Before we launch into today's topic, do you know what it is? And Laura, if you don't see the poll, feel free to type your answer into the chat box. I apologize. The responses for this one are yes, I think so, or not really. So do you know what professional communication is? Give everyone a few more seconds. Great. And here are our results. So one person said yes. Most of us said, I think so, and no one said not really, so great. So we're going to be, really diving in more into what it is today to really open up your thoughts about it and really get you to know everything you need to know about professional communication. And finally, one last one before I turn it over to Mike as he gets us started. This is a multiple choice question. So which of the following below is part of professional communication? Click on all of the ones that you think are part of professional communication. And if you can't see the poll again, the options are writing an email, talking on the phone, an interview, writing a thank you card, social media post, and a video conference call. Looks like we have some great results coming in. Give everyone another few seconds to answer. Great. And as we see here, pretty much the answer is all of them. So no matter which ones you clicked, you were correct. This is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to professional communication. And we are going to start now. I'm going to turn it over to Mike, who is going to get us started on why professional communication is so important.
All right, so why are we talking about professional communication today? Why is it so important? Take a minute and maybe type an answer in the chat box before we move on.
So yeah, take in the chat box, make sure writing, why do you think it's so important? Great, we have a response from Elizabeth that represents you and your organization. That's a great answer. Wait for a few more answers to come through on our chat. Sarah said it's putting your best self forward. I think that's a great answer. Laura says, shows that you can be taken seriously and handle the job at hand. Wonderful. We'll wait for another one to come through, and then you can continue to put your chat in your answer into the chat box. One more person, why they think professional communication is so important. And then we have, it shows respect to all of those who are communicating with. Great. And keep those answers coming through, and I will turn it back over to Mike.
All right, thank you. You know the old saying, you only get one chance to make a first impression? Well, it really is true. And so opinions are formed about you based on how you communicate. I'm going to go to the next slide. Thank you. The 3 types of professional communication that we're going to cover today: oral, written, and digital communication. So let's start with oral communication. And I think we have a poll question here. Have you ever taken a public speaking course before?
We have some results coming in, so we'll give another few moments. All right, great. Thank you for everyone who answered. And Mike, we have some great results. Looks like 67% had said yes and 33% said no.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, let's talk about some similarities as well as some differences between public speaking and presentations that you may have made during that course if you've taken a public speaking course. The similarities are that you have to organize your thoughts very logically, meaning you have to think about how you tell a story. And probably 9 times out of 10 when you're in conversation, you don't really think about that, but you are logically putting the message into an order. But when you are doing public speaking, you definitely are taking the time to make sure everything is arranged logically. You have to tailor the messages to your audience. And that means you may change the way you speak depending on who you're speaking with. So you probably would agree with me that you may speak differently to your professor than you would your best friend. Telling a story for maximum impact is another similarity. And that means that you want to get some type of reaction from somebody. So you're telling a story, you want to get maybe shock and awe, while you're telling a really funny story. You need to adapt to the listener's feedback, meaning you're going to have to change the way you communicate depending on how others receive your message or receive your speech. So they may ask you to stop because you may have shocked them beyond belief, or they may show a facial expression of shocked, but tell me more. There are also differences between public speaking and conversations. In public speaking, it's very highly structured. So you have outlines that help guide you how to put a speech together, and it's going to depending on whether you want to inform, persuade, or commemorate. And one of the resources that I'm going to leave you with today is an opportunity to look at how to write a speech as well as a speech outline. So that'll be provided to you later. Public speaking also requires more formal language. You're most likely not going to be talking to your friends on a Friday night the way that you would actually write the speech. And then, of course, public speaking requires a different method of delivery, which we'll talk a little more about that later. Stage fright. Some of you may have had stage fright, continue to have stage fright. It's basically anxiety over the prospect of giving a speech in front of an audience. But I'll tell you, nervousness is normal. Your body's responding by producing extra adrenaline, the hormone released into the bloodstream in response to a physical or mental stress, like giving a speech. But there is something called positive nervousness. And this positive nervousness is controlled nervousness that helps energize a speaker for her or his presentation. I've been presenting since the 1990s and teaching on the collegiate level since 2004. If I don't get nervous before I give a speech or teach, I think in the back of my head, did I prepare enough for this? All right, on your screen is the speech communication process. So there's a message, whether it's a speech or just conversation, and the other person is going to give you feedback like we just talked about. The one thing that we have to be aware of is something called interference. Interference can be anything, to someone posting on Snapchat or Facebook while you're trying to talk, a car blowing their horn as you and your significant other are just sitting trying to be quiet and alone in a park, or just anything that gets in the way of listening or understanding. So most people want to know, when they have taken my speech class, what are some ways to reduce speech anxiety? Well, there's a few. So the first one is acquire speaking experience. Yes, if you haven't already, register for a public speaking class. If you have, maybe you can join your local Toastmasters group. Have you ever heard of Toastmasters? Toastmasters is an international group, nonprofit educational organization that teaches public speaking and leadership skills through a worldwide network of clubs. The organization's membership exceeds 357,000 people, and there are over 16,000 clubs in 143 countries. Since 1924, Toastmasters International has helped people from diverse backgrounds become more confident speakers, communicators, and leaders. Your university or your college or your local town may have a chapter, and I bet they do. So become a leadership and action facilitator is another way that you can get some public speaking experience. You can facilitate local modules for your chapter. Facilitating modules is a great way to practice public speaking and receive constructive feedback from your peers. You can become a facilitator at National Convention or at Leadership Academy. If you are already a facilitator or you're not, you can request a module today at phi-sigma-pi.org/request-a-module. Prepare, prepare, prepare. Practice in front of the mirror. Your facial expressions, your tone. Are you very monotone or do you vary your tone? What are you doing with your hands? Are they flying all over the place or do you have control of your hands? And did you prep note cards to help you? So if you did forget where you are in the speech, you can actually pick up by using your note cards and cues that are on your note cards. Another way is to think positively. Think you can do it. Repeat to yourself if you have to, especially in front of that mirror. You research the topic, you know your audience, and you practice. So say to yourself, I've got this. Use the power of visualization. This is mental imaging in which you as a speaker vividly picture yourself giving a successful presentation. So picture yourself in front of the class or in front of your chapter, like say you're running for the office of vice president. Know that most nervousness is not visible. We can't hear or feel your heart beating at 100 miles a minute. But if you are a person that sweats, make sure you're wearing antiperspirant and maybe a sweater or a suit jacket to cover up if you're sweating through your shirt. All kidding aside though, don't expect perfection. Everyone flubs a line here and there, even me. Just say excuse me and move on. Some people are really good at making a quick joke and then moving on. All right, so the opportunity here, or the goal of public speaking, is to give you the practice and the tools to give an impromptu speech with little or no preparation, or to work on fully preparing a speech with outline, notes, and note cards. That's called speaking extemporaneously. So let's move into interviewing. Well, interviewing is just like public speaking. You should be aware of a number of things, like your personal appearance. Dress and groom to look your best. Think about your movement. How are you going to sit? Are you going to sit back or sit forward, or are you going to stand? Think about your gestures. Do you use your hands to make a point? If you do, practice that, as well as handing things out. Eye contact. Scan the room and make 3 to 5 seconds of sustained eye contact with each person. This might seem like it's forever, and that's a little weird, but you truly are making a connection with your audience. And that's really the goal of public speaking, of whatever you're sharing, is to make that connection. And you need to prepare. Research your company. Practice answers to common interview questions that you can Google. And review your resume, because the last thing you want to do is be asked a question about your resume and you forget what's on there. At this point, I'm going to pause because Taylor has a resource that she'd like to add.
Yeah, so I just wanted to give you guys a good acronym to remember all of the wonderful points that Mike has been making. So in my coaching as a career counselor, I've told people to remember to sit squarely with the individual you're speaking with, maintain open posture with the person you're speaking with, lean in and show interest and engagement, maintain appropriate levels of eye contact, and relax and enjoy the experience. Don't forget to smile, and always start the conversation with a firm handshake. So it's SOLER is the acronym, SOLER. S is sit and stand squarely. O is maintain open posture. L is lean in and show interest. E is maintain eye contact. And R is relax.
Thank you for sharing that. That's a great acronym that I think really sums up what I've been saying. So thank you, Taylor, for that. All right, let's talk about phone and video calls. These are becoming more popular, and as somebody who is in HR, it is not uncommon for us to hire somebody or at least interview folks outside of our geographical area, so outside of the Baltimore, Washington area. It could be somebody from Canada or California. And so knowing how to act during a phone interview or a video call is helpful. So the first thing to do is to prepare just like you would a face-to-face interview. Dress the part. Even if it's over the phone, dressing up puts you in that correct frame of mind to interview. You look down, you see yourself in a suit and tie or a nice pair of pants and a blouse, right? It really makes your mindset to be focused on your interviewing. Have your materials ready to go at your desk. Spread them out as if you were sitting face to face. And smile. Yes, people can actually hear you smile over the phone. There's an old song that some of you might know, "You're never fully dressed without a smile." Keep that in mind. I'm smiling right now. I hope you can hear it. Also, do your homework. Research the company. Practice answering those questions that you might find on Google, and review your resume. Again, just like you would a face-to-face interview. However, with a phone or a video calls, you have to check your tech. So make sure you're at a quiet place where you can take the call. Make sure all your audio and video programs are working. Do a test run with a friend. or do a test run with the organization that you're interviewing with. Both you as well as the HR professionals and the hiring manager want to make sure that the experience goes well for everybody involved. All right, group projects. The two biggest issues when working on group projects are leadership and participation. And I will tell you, it is the same whether you're working in a college course or when you're out in the working world, and I am not kidding. Leadership is the ability to influence group members so as to help achieve the goals of whatever your group is. And then the second part is, how do you actually get everyone to participate? There are three kinds of group leaders: implied, designated, and emergent. Your implied leaders could be any group member that the members kind of defer to because of his or her rank, his or her experience, or some other quality that makes that person kind of seem above everybody else. The designated leader is a person who's elected or appointed as a leader when the group is formed, so they might actually take a vote. But the emergent leader is a group member who emerges as a leader during the group's deliberations. So as you're starting to form the group, you start seeing that somebody might stand out. And it's usually that person who kind of takes charge, not in a bad way, but in a good way. So if there's no implied or designated leader, you can emerge as the leader by using what is called the reflective thinking method. And here are the steps to the reflective thinking method. The first one is, are you able to define the problem clearly and specifically? If the problem is really complex, are you able to break it down? Leaders are able to break down complex problems. The second step is to analyze the problem. Use the 5 W's and H. You're probably familiar with this. The who, what, where, when, and why, and how. So who is the problem? Or who's having the problem? What is the problem? Where's the problem happening? When is it happening? All the time or just certain times? Why is it happening? And how can this group that's formed together make sure that it's not a problem anymore? The next part is to establish criteria for solutions. Can anyone share an idea? Should we take any ideas and write them down? I would say absolutely. Get everyone active and generate potential solutions. Have everyone throw out ideas. If you're the emergent leader, say something like, there's no such thing as a stupid idea. Let's hear them all. Maybe we can build on one idea or another and combine them. Let's get all the possible solutions out there. Then we can work on selecting the best solution. So the last step is to select the best solution. So after discussing those many potential solutions, agree on a course of action. And 2 notes before I throw it over to Taylor. To improve in public speaking, presenting and interviewing, and working in groups, whether you're still in college or in the work world, become a leadership in action facilitator, take a public speaking course if you haven't, and whether you did or didn't, join a group like Toastmasters to really hone your skills. These are skills that, when developed, will open up so many personal and professional doors for you. Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much, Mike. I'm going to turn it over to Taylor now to talk about the other 2 portions, which is written and digital/online communication. So take it away, Taylor.
Thank you, Casey. So written communications, we're not just talking about handwriting. We're talking about something you guys do every single day, writing emails. This can be death sentence if you write the wrong kind of email or address it informally or too formally. You want to know what kind of audience you are speaking with when you're addressing emails. I like to go ahead and address more formally if you're unsure of who you're really speaking to, or this is like a newer relationship. always address a woman or somebody that prescribes to the female gender as Ms., the MS, instead of MRS, because you never know if she is married or not. And then you also never know if they are prescribed to male or female. So it's often best to do some research and maybe even just use a general neutral address, because I know several times my name, Taylor, can be used as a male or female name, and I've had several students address me as Mr. Brock. And I mean, I don't have a problem with that. It shows that they are trying to address me in a more formal setting, but just try to do your research before you send that email. Not only it's important to address the person correctly, but also sending out how you are sending off your emails. So what words would you use to sign off your emails? If you could just go ahead and type that into the chat box.
We have one from Laura. She said she signs off with best, which is great. Great conclusion. I know personally I am a thanks, thank you in advance. Yes, Laura, I also do that. Also thanks in advance. I am that type of send off. Sarah says best or regards. I wonder if anybody can type in what send off that Danielle does, if they've received an email from Danielle. See if we get some people. Correct, Sarah. Our famous lead on. It's one of my favorites. Megan had fraternally when she's emailing within our fraternity, which is great. I always love seeing that as well when I receive emails from somebody within the fraternity. Thanks for your consideration. Yes, Kelsey, I do that one a lot as well. I am definitely a thanks person.
For me, it depends on the situation. So if I am really like asking somebody for something, I will use thanks, but I mostly use best when I'm signing off. But I found a great resource from Grammarly that tells you the different valedictions to sign off. And I think Casey's going to share that with y'all later.
Yes, that will be in our follow-up email.
So now we'll talk about thank you notes, since we've just talked about emails. Should you send a handwritten thank you note or just an email? We'll do when to do that, what are the appropriate times. So anytime you are appreciating somebody is an appropriate time to send them a thank you. Anytime you're doing an informational interview or just speaking with somebody or meeting with them, or even if you just like, man, I really appreciate my coworker today. Like, she just is so awesome just for being her. You can write them a thank you note. If you are in the interview process, though, some things to think about is the hiring timeline with that. If you know it's a fast hiring timeline and want your expression of gratitude to be known before they make a decision on who they're going to hire, I think it's more than appropriate to just send an email. But if you want, you can send a handwritten thank you note as well. If you're interviewing with multiple people, it's very much appropriate to send a thank you email to each individual person that you interviewed with. That shows your consideration for not just the hiring chair, but the committee as a whole too. When you're writing thank you notes, you always want to include something personal in that email. So if you're sending an thank you email to multiple people, it never wants to be the same email as you would to another member of the group.
And I'm going to share in the chat box. Our most recent and the last LIA challenge for this academic year, it is actually all about writing thank you cards. So there's a quick video about how to write a thank you card. I know some of us as Taylor saying, you need to have that personal touch to it, but we can get stuck when we're staring at that blank screen or that blank card of just exactly where to start, how to form the words, and how to tie in my personal antidote to go with it. So the video explains that, and then there is the challenge there that you can take after you watch the video to earn 2 leadership and action points. I know there are a lot of people out there who are really close to earning their certifications by the end of this academic year. So this webinar and that challenge might just put you over the edge. I will turn it back over to Taylor.
So we talked a little bit about this in the previous webinar, but resumes, as well as your cover letter, is a good example of how to communicate your professionalism to an employer, especially the use of a header. So this could be your brand, how you want to be portrayed. It's one of the first things that is seen and viewed even before they view you as a person. You can choose like the different font style, different lettering and coloring. Just make sure whatever you choose is can be well read, and your name is the biggest thing on that document. You can also use the same header that you use on your resume on your cover letter as well. It's a good branding tool. So now we're going to go in and talk about digital and online communication. So I have a question for all of you. Do you communicate on social media professionally? Like, how do you use social media professionally? Yes or no?
Yes, you can answer the question. And then also, if you want to explain in the chat box, we welcome that as well to get that conversation going. Give everyone a few more moments to answer the poll or type into the chat box. We have just about everyone. Great. So I will share the results, and overwhelmingly we have the answer is yes. And they did have some answers into our chat box as well that I'd like to share. We have 2 of them have said LinkedIn, which I think everyone thinks of social media professionalism, and it's like it goes right with hand in hand with LinkedIn. And then we have also that Kelsey said, I network professionally every single day in her field. She belongs to mostly professional Facebook groups to gain more information. I think that's wonderful. Laura said she also has communicated professionally on social media from a previous job because she was helping companies manage their online presence. We have one that's social media for a community organization. That's great. And we have don't always use your personal Facebook professionally, but you know that some employers do look at that for when you are searching for potential social media. So you want to keep that in mind when I post. I think that is a great tip. I do the same thing. You know, it's not always my personal Facebook. I don't always use it super professionally, but you always want to think about what you're posting because everything that you post is out there for the world to see forever. So whether or not it is 100% professional, you don't want it to come across as completely unprofessional as well. Well, we have a few more coming in. Great. Thanks, everybody, for keep chatting in the box. Keep putting those in. Laura also said when a friend or coworker is on social media, sometimes they become your manager or referrals later. I think that's great. And Kelsey also mentioned again that she curates a Facebook every day via the memories function to clean up what she's posted in the past. And I think that is another wonderful tool that memories pops up every day. So yeah, you can always go through and clean up your Facebook. So you keep chatting in the chat box, everybody. Keep that conversation going as Taylor continues on.
So we're gonna talk a little bit about LinkedIn and how to brand yourself a little bit more, personalizing that. So you want to include any publications you have written. There's a tab under Add More Sections to just type in the publications that you've been writing on or blog posts you've been posting, and linking that so people can see more of what you do on a professional level. Customize your cover photo. So instead of having that blue background, you can maybe do a nice sunset. I know one of my coworkers went to college in the Appalachian Mountains, and he has a nice sunset behind the mountains on his LinkedIn. Another thing to think about too is what to include in your summary section. So I often do an exercise with students called the six-word professional statement. So it gets students and everyone to think about, if you only had 6 words to describe yourself, what would they be? So if we want to, we can come up in the chat box and come up with some of the words that you would use to describe yourself, that you could use in that summary section.
And I think while they are thinking of those words, Taylor, I think we're going to go on to the next slide, let you finish up on that last slide, and then we'll come back and read everyone's 6 words to describe
Sounds
their
good.
goals.
So not only do you want to present yourself in a professional fashion online, but it's very much how you dress tells a lot about who you are professionally. You can communicate your professional dress is because it's one of the first things that others may see other than your resume. That gives an employer a glimpse of who you are. I like to always dress a little bit more conservative or a little bit more formal than I would during just a day-to-day if I was going for an interview. But you definitely want to know your audience when you're dressing and preparing, especially for that interview. Know the company, do your research, know how they dress, and dress for that work environment. You don't want to dress too business professional, but you also don't want to dress too casual. So Casey put up an awesome graphic to really describe the difference between professional attire and business casual attire. So in my office in the career services, sometimes we have to dress business professional if there's an employer coming in. So that would be more of like a blazer for me and heels day versus just business casual attire, which would just be like a nice blouse and skirt with maybe flats instead. So
We did have one response so far. It's not necessarily the 6 words, but it is words to help, ways to help you think of those 6 words, which I am smiling ear to ear, Kelsey. She says to use your Hogwarts house, which is amazing, you know, but also she has to use the high 5 that we used at Leadership Academy, which is great. Those are great ways to be able to find those 6 words, or Strengths Quest, Strengths Finder, True Colors, for those 5 things, you know, that describe you and those top 3 strengths, because you already have these leadership and strengths courses that we've done. So kind of like she's saying, let those do the work and pull out those words that really are for you. I know when we did the high 5, my first one was optimist. That would definitely be a word I would describe myself. I am that glass half full person. So it's definitely one that I would use. Laura has adaptable, loyal, and analytical. Those are great words. Does anybody else have any 6 words they want to put into the chat box. Elizabeth has empathetic, coach, mentor, storyteller. Love it.
I'd also add to Kelsey's, you can use your Myers-Briggs assessment results too. Like, I'm an INTJ. That really describes like what type of personality you are too, in addition to the Strengths Quest or the High Five assessment results.
Definitely. Oh, we have another one. Tanya here says deliverer, thinker, and analyst. Great. Thinking those are, they sound familiar from the High Five, which is wonderful. Sarah said she's seen people put their Strengths Finder or their Myers-Briggs on their resume. Taylor, have you seen that before? Would you recommend that?
I've seen it on occasion. It's not a typical thing. I've seen on the strengths, it's in your header. So if you want to have it right underneath your name, the 5 or so results that you get from your Strengths Quest or your High Five, I've seen that used really well under your header.
Great. Anybody else want to put some of their words they'd like to describe themselves in the chat box? Or we are wrapping up here for the webinar for today. Do you have any questions that you want Taylor or Mike to answer about professional communication, public speaking, anything that you might want to ask them, or have any questions about Toastmasters? I know I am personally a part of a Toastmasters club, so I'd be happy to answer a few questions about my experience there. Mike added that he achiever, learner, responsibility, deliberative, and strategic. Great. And Kelsey then did add her strategic, advocate, coach, advisor, and designer. I think those are wonderful. But I can briefly talk about Toastmasters for a public speaking. It definitely adds on to everything that we teach with Leadership in Action. I have found that Leadership in Action modules, facilitator training, and Toastmasters go hand in hand. They are wonderful. It's a wonderful program. The clubs are so fun to join. You get to hear other people speak who may be a very advanced speaker, and it can be intimidating at first, but it also just pushes yourself to be an even greater speaker and to learn from them. I have learned from so many of the great speakers who are part of the club I am a part of, and it is wonderful. They have helped mentor me. They have helped me with my delivery, my speed. I am a fast talker, so they've helped me with that, and also just forming a speech. It really helps you break down how to write a speech for when you're public speaking, as well as having those one-on-one conversations, which are impromptu speeches. So something to think about joining. I saw Mike just put the link in the chat box. I can share it out again as well, just so everybody can see it. You can find your local chapter club there, and I would highly recommend going. It is free to attend to be a guest for the first, and you can be a guest as many times as you'd like. So I would definitely recommend attending a meeting or two if there's one local to you, as well as we talked about being a facilitator. So it's just going to help you improve more and get different feedback in different situations. Does anybody have any questions as we wrap up? Great, we do have a question here. Eric, he first says, thank you. Again, thank you for the great presentation, but do you have any advice on any cliches when it comes to resumes / interviews to avoid? I think that could be a question for both Taylor and Mike, so forever who wants to go first?
I think articulating your strengths and weaknesses are important, knowing how to do that. The common answer for weakness is saying you're perfectionist, which is not the best answer. I would say when you talk about your weakness, you want to talk about it in a way that you are mentioning how you are improving upon that weakness. So it can be anything, as far as like not being on time all the time, or not answering emails, or trying to multitask. But giving an example of how you are improving upon that weakness is always a great way to make that question a successful one.
And I'll be happy to add that if you put something on there like strategic thinker, right? Instead of writing strategic thinker, give us actionable examples of how you were a strategic thinker. So get away from those like kind of resume buzzwords and actually start, instead of just putting your job duties, put actions that you were successful in. Did you decrease the cost of your onboarding process by 70%? I would like to talk to you about that. You know, so things like that, put those action items or those results, not just your job duties.
Great, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions that they would like answered before we conclude for today?
I would like to add from the quantifying things. You can also quantify things in ways of like telling how many, how often you've done something, how much money you manage as well, or how many people you collaborated with on a team is a great example. So if you've done something where you've worked with a group of people, tell me how many people you did that with. Teamwork is one of the top skills employers look for, so including that information is always helpful for them to know.
Great, well, thank you so much. Again, if anyone has any further questions that pop into their head, I know I am somebody who, my question always comes to me as soon as the webinar is over. I'm going to ask if they are okay with it for Taylor and Mike to share their email into the chat box. And also, if you have any questions, you could also email me and I can pass that along to them to reach out, you know, to follow up with the webinar, just saying, hi, I had another question. So if they are okay with that, they can put their email into the chat box for you to look at. And I will wrap up for today. I just want to thank Taylor and Mike again for taking the time out of their afternoon to talk and to share all about professional communication with us today. As I said, if you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to connect with them on email, and then Mike is saying to connect with him on LinkedIn as well. I'm sure, you know, that goes for all of us. You know, definitely connect with everyone that you meet networking on LinkedIn for any further tips and communication. You will be able to watch and share this webinar on our YouTube page at youtube.com/Phi Sigma Pi, and it will also be uploaded to our Facebook page as well. You can share it with your members, fellow alumni, coworkers, anybody who you think would benefit from this, who weren't able to join us this afternoon. Definitely hold it as a watch party. I know a few chapters have done that this past week, which is great. Shout out to those chapters who've had a lunch and dinner watch party of recorded webinars. I'm going to put a survey into the chat box. If you could take the time to complete that survey, it will also be included into the email as well. So if you're not able to do it right this second, but just to let us know what you thought of the webinar today, and you have any suggestions on how we can improve them in the future and possible topics you would like us to cover. We love hearing feedback from you. And again, thank you for participating today, and congratulations on earning your 8 leadership and action points. As I mentioned, a lot of you are close, a lot of members are close to earning those 75 points and earning their leadership and action certification. So hopefully this webinar has put you to that mark. Remember, you can also earn more points by participating in Leadership in Action modules and watching the other past Lunch and Learn webinars and completing the LIA challenges. You can request your local modules at phisigmapi.org/request-a-module. And you can see the challenges on the blog portion of the website. And that does it here for us today, for today's Leadership in Action Lunch and Learn webinar, and for our Preparing for Professional Life, a webinar series. And we will see you all back here in the fall. So thank you, and lead on.